Silas Thorne had lived alone in his cabin for nearly 8 years, the rhythmic sound of his axe against timber marking the passage of countless days. The forest had become his sanctuary, a place where the weight of his past could be buried beneath the honest labor of cutting wood and the silence of towering pines. His hands, calloused and scarred from years of work, moved with practiced precision as he split log after log, each swing of his axe a meditation that kept darker thoughts at bay. The morning mist still clung to the trees when he first saw them, two small figures moving through the shadows between the trunks like ghosts made flesh. Silas paused mid-swing, his weathered face creasing into a frown as he watched the children approach. They couldn't have been more than 10 and 12 years old, their clothes worn but clean, their dark hair braided with beads that caught what little sunlight filtered through the canopy above. The older child, a girl with fierce eyes that seemed too old for her young face, clutched something against her chest, a leather pouch that appeared to hold great significance. The boy beside her moved with the cautious grace of a forest creature, his gaze darting between Silas and the surrounding woods as if calculating escape routes. Both children bore the unmistakable features of the local tribes, their copper skin and high cheekbones marking them as natives to this land that Silas had chosen for his exile. They stopped just beyond the reach of his axe, close enough to speak but far enough to run if needed. "You are Silas Thorne," the girl said, her voice carrying an authority that seemed impossible for someone so young. It wasn't a question but a statement of fact, delivered with the certainty of someone who had traveled far to find exactly the right person. Silas set down his axe slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. Years of solitude had made him wary of unexpected visitors, but something about these children stirred a protective instinct he thought had died long ago. "I am," he replied, his voice rough from disuse. "And you are." "My name is Ayana," the girl said, lifting her chin with pride. "This is my brother, Takoda. We have come because you killed our father." The words hit Silas like a physical blow, causing him to take a step backward. His mind reeled, searching through memories he had worked so hard to suppress. The faces of men he had killed in service to his country flickered through his consciousness like pages in a book he wished he had never read. Too many faces, too many names, too many lives cut short by his orders or his own hand. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but even as the words left his mouth, something shifted in the depths of his memory. A mission from years past, shrouded in shadows and government secrecy. A name surfaced like a bubble rising from deep water, Kalen Stonehand. Takoda stepped forward, his young face twisted with grief and anger. "Our father was Kalen Stonehand. He worked with the federal government, helping them find those who would steal from our people's land. You were sent to kill him when they thought he had betrayed them." The memory crashed over Silas with devastating clarity. A moonless night, a hidden camp, orders that had seemed clear at the time but now felt murky and wrong. He remembered the weight of his rifle, the way Kalen had looked at him with sad acceptance rather than fear, as if he had known this moment would come. The man had said something before Silas pulled the trigger, words that had haunted the edges of his dreams ever since. He said to tell his children that he loved them, Silas whispered, the admission tearing from his throat like a confession in church. He said to tell them he was sorry. Ayana's grip tightened on the leather pouch, her knuckles white with tension. "He left us this," she said, holding up the bag. "He said if anything happened to him, we should bring it to you. He said you would know what to do." Before Silas could respond, the sound of approaching horses echoed through the forest. The rhythmic thunder of hooves on earth grew louder, accompanied by the jingle of metal and the creak of leather. Ayanna and Takoda immediately moved closer to Silas, their earlier accusations seemingly forgotten in the face of this new threat. A group of riders emerged from between the trees, led by a man whose fine clothes and well-groomed appearance marked him as someone unaccustomed to the wilderness. His horse, a magnificent bay stallion, danced nervously beneath him as he surveyed the scene before him. Behind him rode half a dozen men, their hands resting casually on the butts of their pistols in a way that suggested they were comfortable with violence. "Well, well," the leader said, his voice carrying the smooth confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. "Silas Thorne, the famous hermit of the northern woods. I am Caleb Vance, and I believe you have something that belongs to me." His gaze fell upon the two children, and his smile turned predatory. "Those children are my property, purchased fair and square from their tribe after their father's unfortunate death. And that pouch they carry contains information about a silver mine that rightfully belongs to those with the vision and resources to develop it properly." Silas felt something cold and hard settle in his chest, a familiar feeling he had hoped never to experience again. His hand moved instinctively toward the rifle that leaned against his woodpile, but Caleb's men were already drawing their weapons. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Caleb said, his voice losing its veneer of politeness. "These children have caused me considerable trouble, running away from my estate and making wild accusations about their father's death. But children have such active imaginations, don't they? Especially Indian children who have been exposed to too many fanciful stories about spirits and magic." Ayanna stepped forward, her young face blazing with defiance. "We are not his property. Our father never sold us to anyone. This man lies as easily as he breathes." Caleb's expression darkened. "Silence, child. You will come with me now, along with that pouch, and perhaps I will be merciful when we return to my estate. The mine your father discovered will make us all rich, but I need the exact location that your fool of a father encoded in that bag." "There is no location," Takoda said quietly, speaking for the first time since the confrontation began. "We burned the map 3 days ago when we realized what kind of man you truly are. The pouch contains nothing but ash now." The silence that followed this revelation was deafening. Caleb's face went through a series of expressions: disbelief, rage, and finally a cold calculation that made Silas's blood run cold. This was a man who would kill children without hesitation if it served his purposes. "You lying little savages," Caleb snarled, raising his hand as if to strike Ayanna. "Do you have any idea what you've cost me? That mine was worth a fortune." Silas moved without conscious thought, years of training taking over as he stepped between Caleb and the children. His hand found his rifle with practiced ease, the weapon coming up to his shoulder in one smooth motion. The familiar weight of it felt both comforting and terrible in his hands. "Step back," he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who had commanded soldiers in life-or-death situations. "These children are under my protection now." Caleb's men shifted nervously in their saddles, unsure whether to draw their weapons or wait for orders. Their leader studied Silas with calculating eyes, clearly weighing his options. "You would risk your life for 2 Indian children you barely know?" Caleb asked, genuine curiosity coloring his tone. What could they possibly mean to you? The answer surprised Silas with its clarity. I killed their father, he said simply. That makes me responsible for them now. The standoff stretched on, tension crackling in the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. Silas could feel the children behind him, their small forms pressed close to his back, trusting him with their lives despite everything that had passed between them. The weight of that trust was heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. Then, like salvation appearing on the horizon, came the sound of more horses. But these riders moved with military precision, their approach announced by the clear notes of a cavalry bugle. Federal soldiers in blue uniforms emerged from the forest, their weapons already drawn and pointed at Caleb's men. At their head rode a tall man with graying temples and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. His uniform bore the insignia of a commander, and his sharp eyes quickly assessed the situation before him. Caleb Vance, the commander said, his voice carrying the weight of official authority. You are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and the murder of Kalen Stonehand. Caleb's face went pale. Commander Hayes, surely there has been some mistake. I was merely conducting legitimate business with these children and their guardian here. Hayes dismounted, his hand resting on his saber. The only mistake was thinking you could murder a federal informant and steal his discovery without consequences. Kalen Stonehand was working under our direct orders to investigate your illegal mining operation. His death was regrettable but necessary to maintain his cover and protect the larger mission. The commander's words hit Silas like a second blow. You mean he was innocent? Innocent of betraying his people, yes, Hayes replied. Everything Kalen did was in service to protecting tribal lands from illegal exploitation. His death was staged to make Vance believe he had eliminated a threat, but we always planned to move against Vance once we had sufficient evidence. Ayanna looked up at Silas, tears streaming down her face. Our father died to protect our people's sacred places. He knew it might cost him his life, but he did it anyway. Hayes nodded gravely. The silver mine Vance sought to claim illegally is now under permanent tribal protection. Kalen's sacrifice has ensured that his people will control their own resources and destiny. As his men moved to arrest Caleb and his followers, Hayes approached Silas and the children. From his saddlebag, he withdrew a sealed letter, yellowed with age. Kalen left this for his children, Hayes said, offering the letter to Ayanna. He asked that it be delivered along with his final message of gratitude to the man who helped complete his mission. Ayanna took the letter with trembling hands, breaking the wax seal with careful reverence. Her lips moved silently as she read her father's words, fresh tears cutting tracks down her cheeks. When she finished, she looked up at Silas with something approaching forgiveness in her dark eyes. He says he forgives you, she whispered. He says you were a good soldier following orders, and that he hopes you can forgive yourself too. He asks that you watch over us until we can return safely to our people. Silas felt something break loose inside his chest, a knot of guilt and grief that had been choking him for years. He knelt down so that he was at eye level with both children, seeing not enemies but two young souls who had lost their father to the same war that had claimed his own humanity. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness, he said quietly, but I promise you this. I will do everything in my power to honor your father's memory and keep you safe. Over the following weeks, as the legal proceedings against Caleb unfolded and arrangements were made for the children's future, Silas found himself drawn into a community he had avoided for nearly a decade. The local town, which had always seemed like a place of judgment and unwanted questions, began to feel different when viewed through the eyes of two children who needed stability and care. Ayanna proved to be remarkably intelligent, with a hunger for learning that reminded Silas of his own youth. Takoda, though quieter, showed an intuitive understanding of the natural world that impressed even the hermit who had made the forest his home. Both children carried their grief with a dignity that humbled their reluctant guardian. When the tribal council arrived to discuss the children's future, Silas expected them to take Ayanna and Takoda away immediately. Instead, the elders spoke with him at length about their father's wishes and the children's own desires. It seemed that Kalen, in his final letter, had suggested that the children might benefit from learning the ways of both worlds, their own rich cultural heritage, and the formal education offered by the white settlers' schools. The solution that emerged surprised everyone, perhaps most of all Silas himself. The town had been searching for a schoolteacher, someone who could work with children from both the settled community and the surrounding tribes. Silas's military background had given him an education that, while unconventional, had prepared him to teach others. His recent experiences had given him something even more valuable, an understanding of the cost of hatred and the possibility of redemption. Standing before the small schoolhouse on his first day as teacher, with Ayanna and Takoda among his students, Silas felt the weight of his past settling into something different, not a burden to be carried alone, but a foundation upon which something better could be built. The children who looked up at him with curious eyes represented not just his chance at redemption, but the hope of a future where understanding might triumph over fear, and where the sins of one generation need not be visited upon the next. The morning sun streamed through the schoolhouse windows, illuminating faces both young and eager to learn. As Silas began his first lesson, he realized that sometimes the path to redemption leads not to the solitude we think we deserve, but to the community we never knew we needed. The reclusive lumberjack who had hidden from his past had become a teacher preparing young minds for their future. And in that transformation, both he and the children he now protected had found something approaching peace.